This Thursday, December 12th, NBA Betting Picks edition of the NBA Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code NBA SGPN to get a 50% deposit bonus of up to $1,000. We're also brought to you by Rebet, a new sportsbook available in 45 states. Download Rebet in your app store and use promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit match up to $100. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. Start crushing college football and the NFL with Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. Welcome, everyone, to the NBA Gambling Podcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. NBA Thursday, back to the regular schedule. Only 3 games on the docket here tonight, but we'll go through each and every one of them, as we always do. We'll recap what we saw in the NBA Cup Quarterfinal games from Wednesday night. And then, of course, like I mentioned, handicap the games for Thursday. Give you our lock and dog, and of course our Underdog Fantasy entry here as well. But joining me here to help me break everything down happening on the hardwood, I got my guy here with me. It's Scott Studio Reichel. Scott, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
Yeah, doing pretty well. Had a sweep on the show yesterday. Ended up winning with Eason as my lock. I had the over 5.5 rebounds. Bit of more of a sweat than I was hoping for because Şengün ended up playing, but it didn't matter as he ended up going over in the third quarter. For the dog, had the same game parlay. Had Brunson 8+ assists with the under in the game, and that paid at a plus 243. Definitely a fun, I don't want to say miracle win, but Brunson had 3 assists in garbage time in the last minute, so that definitely helped out, and he finished with 8. So can't complain. Nice sweep. Overall, definitely a pretty, I'd say, interesting pair of games. Both games were competitive. The unders were never in doubt.
Yeah.
Future reference, by the way, bet single game elimination unders. Keep that in mind. But either way, pretty overall, I'd say entertaining games. The Warriors game was a rock fight, but at least the games were competitive. So the National Blowout Association took the night off.
No, yeah. I mean, look, all 4 games, except maybe you could say about the Dallas game. Dallas and Thunder game was
3
a
of the 4
blowout.
were good.
Yeah, and I mean, that's all we can ask for. But yeah, like you mentioned, right, these games, when you have this type of atmosphere, you know, you don't really want to, it's an elimination game. So, I mean, I don't want to say it's compared to NBA playoffs, something similar to that. But like you mentioned, they were competitive, and it was just fun to watch on both nights there. Like you mentioned, the underdogs cashing all 4 games. Last night, the underdogs went 2-0 ATS, 1-1 straight up. But it was just fun to watch these games. And look, the Atlanta Hawks went in to Madison Square Garden, where Trae Young is just absolutely owns the Knicks in their own arena. It was good to see they had some questionable tags on some of their key guys, but I don't think there was a doubt that they were going to end up playing the Jalen Johnsons of the world, the DeAndre Hunters of the world. But we can start with that game, a 108-100 victory for the Atlanta Hawks. They punched their ticket to the semifinals and head to Vegas, which will be on Saturday. But I think a lot of the conversation has been about the New York Knicks and what their expectations was coming into this season. But I don't think a lot of the conversation has been about how well the Atlanta Hawks have been playing in these games, especially on the road. And they've actually been playing pretty good defense, I would say, on the road at least. They are 14-12 straight up this season, sitting in the 7th spot in that Eastern Conference. But a huge victory for the Atlanta Hawks, like I mentioned there, Scott, led by Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, Clint Capella, all around just a team effort for the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, definitely true. I ended up seeing multiple guys score double digits. They had 5, and Dyson Daniels had 9 as well. So it was a pretty well-rounded offensive showing by Atlanta, despite only scoring 108. You're looking at Trae, who ended up having 22 and 11. Thought he was great down the stretch. Couple of free lobs to Capella there when they were trapping at the end to get him to a double-double. You saw Capella finish with 11 and 13. Jalen Johnson, I thought, was the best player on the court, besides maybe Cat, who was in foul trouble for most of the game anyway. That 5th foul is a joke, separate story. Point is, though, Johnson had 21, 15, and 7, and he was questionable entering the game, so he was phenomenal throughout. The real story of the game for me was, I'd say chalk it down to one run, but it's why I never view the Knicks as serious title contenders. I don't think Tibbs is good enough.
Yeah.
And I thought that it was another game where Tibbs just let the other team go on a massive run while his team died, and he just didn't call a timeout. And the Hawks went on a massive run there in that third quarter to once again kind of take the lead, and they were able to hold on from there. Tibbs is just watching his team fall apart, and he's not doing anything. And I just feel like we've seen that time and time again, not to mention the fact that Tibbs plays all his guys a bunch of minutes, and that tends to be an issue at season's end health-wise. His timeout usage is a serious problem, or lack thereof in this case, and it's why I don't view the Knicks as serious contenders. I don't think Tibbs is good enough to actually win a title as a head coach. Is that a fair statement? I know it's a one-game situation, but if you want to argue about the playoff atmosphere and the stakes being at their highest,
Yeah.
Tibbs just does stuff in the middle of games that kills momentum, or at least tries to avoid, I'd say, stopping the opponent's momentum.
Yeah.
And that just comes back to bite him all the time. If you've been a head coach for this long and you still don't know when to call timeouts, you got a problem on your hands.
I think it's not only that. I think in game there's only a few head coaches that you trust, especially when it does come to like playoff time. I think Eric Spoelstra, I think for us, is at the top of that list. But it's also the fact that he's driving his players into the ground and just continues to be a theme, putting them out there 40 plus minutes. And I mentioned this, I think, when we did the Monday pod, is that the Atlanta Hawks were going to have the rest advantage in this game. And you go back and look at the minutes against the Toronto Raptors. Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby played 41 minutes. Yes, I understand you want to go out there and win the game as well, but it's also the fact, like last season, the injuries caught up to the New York Knicks as they progressed through the playoffs. I think a large part has to do with the amount of minutes that this team is, or Coach Tibbs is putting his starters out there, and it's nothing new. We've known that throughout his coaching career, but it's also the fact that you, as a front office, you need to go out and get some depth as well coming off of the bench, because I think we both agreed that this bench was pretty much non-existent, especially without Mitchell Robinson, who now is going to be out till January, was the latest report. They did get Precious Achiuwa back, but outside of that, they really don't have much of a bench. Does this Knicks team campaign? I mean, Miles McBride, okay, but you can't, and you're playing those type of minutes for your starters, eventually it's going to catch up to you. And also you parlay that with, like you mentioned, the in-game adjustments. That's why I also believe that he's not going to be able to guide this New York Knicks team to a NBA title anytime soon. So I think at minimum, Scott, if they don't make it to the Eastern Conference Finals again this year, I think we'll probably see a new head coach in New York next season.
We're saying again, they didn't make it last year. They lost to Indiana.
Yeah.
But point is, though, to mention the bench,
at least, yeah.
To mention the bench that you touched upon, the Knicks bench was a casual. Just to go through the actual numbers here, it was pretty rough. They were 2 for 11 from 3, and they were 6 for 17 from the floor.
Yeah.
Not good enough, simply put. But I got to mention the timeouts. We're going to get to the late game in a second. That it was bizarre the way the Warriors game ended. But my main thing, we always talk about the Thibodeau running his players into the ground type of argument, which I can't argue with because that's just correct. I got to mention the timeouts because I don't really know what the point is as a head coach if you're not going to try to stop momentum when everything's going against you. And yes, you can win a title even if you don't call timeouts. Mazzulla has never been a big timeout guy. I know that Udoka is not a big timeout guy either. You can overcome it. But at the same point as a head coach, how is a timeout going to hurt you? Your offense has completely cratered. Your defense can't stop anybody in the third quarter. You get outscored 34-18 in the quarter. Can you at least try to burn a timeout? Try to change something? Atlanta had all the momentum. They were on like an 18-4 run or a 20-something-4 run. You're not doing anything. You had your hands in your pockets. You got to try something.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like him and Matt Eberflus are in the same category of using timeouts. Eberflus maybe in a whole other category, but yeah, I understand it, right? Again, I think a lot of it when it comes to what makes a great head coach, especially in the NBA, and when it matters the most, it's in-game adjustments, how you manage your timeouts,
I think
how do you stop momentum.
The key phrase I'll use is situational awareness. You can continue your point.
Yeah, and we know, right? Like in the NBA, it's a game of runs, and how do you slow down shifting momentums and making those in-game adjustments? I think that's what separates good head coaches from the great head coaches. And I think I think we can both agree that there's only a handful of those in the league right now, or there has ever been. You have anything else for Knicks and the Hawks before we get over to the Rockets and the Warriors?
Well, I know that he has been battling some injuries this season, but in general, I think he does deserve a bit of a call out. Brunson's got to play better.
Yeah.
Just got to mention that. I mean, Trae Young, I thought, outplayed him the entire game. Brunson was 5 of 15. Cat, I feel bad for him because that foul that he ended up having, I thought was an absolute joke, which gave him his 5th early in the fourth quarter. They had to bench him, and at that point, the Hawks kind of, they already were leading, but they kind of opened it up from there. I thought that was an atrocious foul call. I like how the refs in both games will let the players play, but the refs decided at like the 10-minute mark in the fourth quarter, we're going to let these guys kill each other. And the one exception was the cat foul, which I thought was a really bad call. Thought the Knicks should have challenged that, actually. I thought that you might have seen the Hawks player extend his offhand to try to fend off Cat. So I thought that could have been a challenge opportunity. That did potentially sway the game to some degree, but I thought momentum was already in favor of the Hawks. That foul call was rough, though. But I'm not even going to say that's why the Knicks lost. They lost because Tibbs made no adjustments. He didn't take a timeout, and Brunson was really not that good.
Yep, I agree 100%. All right, before we get over to the Rockets game and the Warriors game from Wednesday night, let me just quickly tell everybody about our good old friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Pick'em has one of the biggest menus for all sports, whether it is going to be in college football, college basketball, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and more. You can now use specials and boosts on all flex entries. So sign up with promo code NBA SGPN to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That's underdogfantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code NBA SGPN. And we're also brought to you by Rebet. Rebet is a new social sportsbook available in 45 states. There are plenty of betting opportunities that are available on Rebet. It's easy to use and great for people in states where traditional sportsbooks may be restricted. Download the Rebet in the App Store and use the promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit match up to $100. Again, that's Rebet. Make sure you use that promo code SGPN. All right. The second game of the night was the Houston Rockets and the Golden State Warriors. Warriors came into this game beating the Rockets 15 straight times in the regular season. But the Rockets find a way to pull it out 91-90, which, like Scott mentioned, this was an absolute rock fight between these two teams. Some questionable calls or lack thereof in this game by the referees there. I'll admit to that, that favor the Rockets in this game, but they do get the victory. They snap the losing streak they have against the Golden State Warriors, led by Şengün, who had 26 points for the Rockets, 11 rebounds. Fred VanVleet, a shell of himself in this game, but did have 7 assists.
He made a big three. He made a big three at the end of the fourth quarter, but he was not very good for any portion of the game, but he made one big shot. So.
Yeah, and then the two guys coming off of the bench, Tari Eason and Amen Thompson, combined for 19 points, 13 rebounds, and Jabari Smith also had 15 points on 6 of 11 shooting. So not really much standing out as far as the stats off this page, but this, I think, was more of what transpired in the game as far as turnovers from the Warriors side. I think nothing new there, Scott, but the Rockets do find a way to pull it off 91-90.
Okay, so just to be clear, I know that there's one elephant in the room that we got to talk about. I'll bring it up quickly. It was an atrocious foul call. Let's start there.
Yeah.
It's a really bad foul call. I don't want to compare it to the cat foul, different circumstance, but the same idea. When you're allowing both teams to kill each other and you have a throwback to what people think 80s and 90s basketball looked like, you can't call that. That can't be a foul call with like 4 seconds left. Now, the shot selection by Curry was suspect. Yes, I know it's Steph. He shot it with a lot of time left on the clock, especially when there's only a 3-second differential. So I thought that Curry could have done a better job of potentially, waiting out a few more seconds to get the shot off. At the end of the day, though, Curry had some separation. He went 40, missed. But that's the main place to start. The call was really bad. Now, Jalen Green made the free throws. Good for the Rockets. They got the job done. However, not enough people on TV, whether it was inside the NBA, whether it's going to be ESPN, podcast, whatever, are being critical enough of the Warriors choking again in the fourth quarter of a game. Yes, you could argue that the Warriors would have won the game had they not have made that foul call. On the other hand, They scored one damn point in the final 3:30 of regulation. In the final 3:37 of regulation, they scored 1 point. I show no sympathy to Golden State. Put the ball in the damn basket. How many times over the last 2-3 years do you have are you just going to blow leads in the fourth quarter? The Warriors are an atrocious crunch time team, and I've been critical of Steve Kerr for years. Yes, he has 4 titles. Congrats. You had all-time great players. We got to at least hold them accountable to some degree, because yes, the referees played a factor. At the same point, though, this has been a common theme for years. This team sucks in the fourth quarter of games. They are awful in crunch time. And you could argue it's on the players. You could argue that it's on the coaching staff with Steve Kerr. I got to roast Golden State. You can't score 1 point in the final 3:37 and expect me to feel bad for you. Put the ball in the basket. You lose. Have fun going back to the beach. I got nothing else to say. They're just a terrible crunch time team. They have been for years.
They made the last field goal they made in the game was 3:38 left with the Jonathan Kuminga 3 from that corner. That put them up by 7 points. After that, they just made one free throw at the 3:03 mark, which again, Jonathan Kuminga there. But I think my biggest gripe with the Warriors is, and I think a lot of people and Warriors fans are talking about this as well, is the lack of consistency in the rotations and what Steve Kerr is trying to accomplish with that. Because there was a point, I want to say, what was around 6.5 minutes left. He pulled Steph and Draymond out of the game. And I was like, in a game where you're up 3 points and you have all the momentum right now. And yes, I do understand, like Lindy Waters and Pajemski hit a couple big 3-pointers that got him up to, I think, what was it, like 7-point lead. And then Kuminga hit that 3 in the corner that put him up 7. That's when Steph Curry and Draymond Green came back in. But it was an opportunity for you to really pull away in that game because you had all the momentum and the Rockets weren't able to make any shots. And they also had that 8-second turnover, the backcourt violation where they weren't able to get it across in 8 seconds. But after that, like you mentioned, it was just lack of execution for this team. And yes, I agree 100% that the foul that was called, I think what they called it on Kuminga at the end for Jalen Green to get the free throws. I think that was a terrible call. But they also did miss 2 calls on Steph Curry at the beginning of the game. I'm not sure if you caught this. I think it was the first quarter or the second quarter. Steph Curry hit a shot. He got fouled, and they're going back down the court. And Billy Kennedy looks at the bench, and he tells Steph Curry, like he's pointing to himself, he's like, my bad, I should have called that. And then there was another one where he got hit on the wrist where they didn't call, which was a clear foul as well. And again, I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for the Warriors, but like you mentioned, it's like when it gets down to crunch time, like they're not going to maybe call fouls. Like when you have Curry and Draymond out there, you've got to find a way to put the ball in the basket in the final 3 minutes there. But outside of that, I think it was a really fun 90s competitive type of game. Both teams only combined for 19 free throw attempts in the game. So look, the Rockets get it done, give them credit, but I think Warriors fans are starting to get frustrated with what you mentioned about Steve Kerr and the lack of consistency with the rotations.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the actual, I'd say, choke jobs by Golden State this season. I see KC's mentioning about the Curry winning clutch player of the year. Honestly, there weren't many great candidates last year, but I remember Golden State blowing a ton of leads. The Joker half-court shot was last year, or that was 2 years ago? I'm trying to even remember, but there were a bunch of blown double-digit leads with the Warriors last year, too. I just want to point out some of the games here recently for Golden State with blown leads. Not going to spend too much time on it. Game against the Nuggets, about a week ago, led by 11 with 6:02 to go. Lost the game. Not ideal. In that same game, they led by 8 with about 4:20 to go, blew the game. So that ended up happening. Led against the Nets by about 20. Nets had no players. Cam Thomas got injured. Cam Johnson got injured. They blew that game, too. Played the game against the Spurs, got outscored by about 20 in the fourth quarter. They've been a terrible overall fourth quarter team. Yeah. And I mentioned it before. I'm not trying to sound like a pure Steve Kerr hater, but when he retires, and when I have to explain to people of the next generation how Steve Kerr has 4 rings, but I don't think he's actually that good of a head coach, it's going to be an interesting dynamic. I think when Kerr retires, I think he'll be one of the most overrated coaches of all time based on the rings. And I once again feel like that's not exactly a hot take. I know that he helped revolutionize the NBA with the three-point movement with Steph and with Clay, and now he took over from Mark Jackson, won a title. They got Durant, and they had the title against the Celtics at the end. Damn, I've been unimpressed by Steve Kerr for years. And I got to mention it, because I know he's got 4 rings, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I am so unimpressed by him almost every game.
Yeah. And again, I think that's something that's going to, I mean, look, they got off to a great start during the regular season going, that depth was really working for them. But now I think you get into a point where you have to tighten up the rotations and go 9, 10 max deep if you want to. But I think Curry has to be better, especially in a game where you're trying to get to the semifinal of a NBA Cup. Only having 19 points, playing 34 minutes, I don't think that was going to get it done for them.
And
but
it's basic stuff. Rotations are bad. Kuminga was in the doghouse last year for no reason. He's clearly one of their best players.
Yeah.
I don't really understand what Kerr's doing for the roster management, the rotations, and whatever they're doing in the final 5 minutes of games, because none of it's working. And I got to call Steve Kerr out. Yes, you could argue that the players have to put the ball in the basket. I see people mentioning why you ended up having a Lindy in the game who did basically nothing down the stretch. And I get that players have to produce. But damn, I would say that Kerr doesn't really do his players any favors. I don't know what that final play design was, by the way. They put like half the lineup at half court. They kind of scrambled, and then Curry got the ball 35 feet out because nobody else was open. I don't know what the play actually was. It said an off-ball screen for Buddy Hield somewhere. I don't know what the play was, but yeah, Kerr, I think, has to coach a lot better, and not enough people hold him accountable.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you are saying there. But and again, separate conversation, maybe not a lot to do with it here, but I agree with, he had the star players in their prime, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, when they won the title. I think we all agree that the most impressive title that the Warriors won was that most recent one, where I think both you and I liked the Warriors that year to win the title. When was that? What, 3 years ago, 4 years ago for the Golden State Warriors?
Against Boston? Yeah, about 3.
Yeah. So we'll put a cap on that. So I think what we're going to do, Scott, we'll do a special episode, maybe like Friday night or like Saturday morning for the NBA Cup semifinal games. And then we can expand more on the NBA Cup.
I just wanted to get that on the record.
No,
yeah. Steve Kerr needs to be held accountable, and not enough people hold him accountable.
Yep. All right, let's get over to the 3 games here for tonight on the Thursday night schedule. Back to your regularly scheduled program. And we'll start it off here with the Detroit Pistons. They are in Boston to take on the Celtics. Celtics currently laying 12.5 points in this game with a total of 227. Injury report, I'll start here with the Detroit Pistons. Pretty healthy squad. Nobody of significance really on there. For the Boston Celtics, Sam Hauser is doubtful here tonight. And Jason Tatum is also on the injury report. He's questionable. And that's pretty much it. Boston laying 12.5 in this game. I believe this is the third matchup of the season between these two teams. Boston has won both of those, I believe, and I think both of those games did end up going over the total. Quickly looking at, so the third game of the regular season was in Detroit, 124-118 victory for the Boston Celtics, and then they ran it back again on last Wednesday, I should say. 130-120 victory for the Boston Celtics again at home this time. Did not cover the number in either of those games, but here we are again. Scott, 12.5 is a number. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm going to take the points in this game. I think it's too many, especially with Tatum being questionable. Boston has won 11 straight against this team, but they're having some close meetings. Each of the first 2 meetings were decided by less than 11 points. Of course, last year, the Celtics won that game in overtime against one of the worst teams that we've seen in a while. They won that game by 6. Point is, though, Detroit's been kind of feisty against this team over the years, and so far this year, they've been competitive, haven't won any of the games. I'm not picking them to win this one, but 12.5 is too big, especially if Tatum's not going to play. The Celtics can afford to sit him if they really want to. We know Boston is one of the best teams in the league anyway. Still have Jaylen Brown, still have a lot of options that can get by in the spot with Tatum out of the lineup. So with Tatum's uncertainty, I'll take the points. 12.5 feels like too many.
Yeah, I'm with you. 12.5 with the Pistons here. I think they keep this game competitive. Both teams obviously well rested. Haven't played since Saturday, I believe, have the Boston Celtics. But even with Tatum questionable here too, I do expect him to be out there for this Boston Celtics team. But I've been pretty impressed with Detroit this season. I think we've talked about a lot this season. That JB Bickerstaff has gone in there and done a great coaching job with this young roster. I know they've mixed in some veterans, but Cade's been playing at an absolutely phenomenal level. The front court depth has stepped up for this team as well. So I do like the plus the points here with the Detroit Pistons, 12.5 total, 227. Scott, anything on the total?
Yeah, I'll go over. Each of the first two meetings did land at least in the 240s. The last meeting was 250. Yes, if Tatum doesn't play, that would hurt the over. The total feels a bit low. Detroit has not been great defensively for the last couple weeks, and Boston's not afraid of jacking up a bunch of threes. Boston could score 130 in any given game, regardless of who's in the line, if they just get hot from three. So I'll go with the over in this one. Think that the total's too low.
Yeah, I know Detroit has been struggling lately on the road a little bit as far as the number of points they've been allowing. But I still think that they can keep this game competitive. But I also do like the over 227 in this game. Anything else for this game?
I thought about Jaylen Brown assists for props if Tatum doesn't play, more usage. Was that like 3.5?
Yeah.
Minus 120 last night. Bit cheap for me. Don't mind the assist.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out Jalen during this season and on his rebounds, but I just really haven't been able to because his minutes have been just inconsistent.
I gave up on the points for that exact same reason.
Yeah, so I think that's one guy I've put on the shelf as far as backing his player props. I think somebody in the chat mentioned Cade, R.A., Adam mentioning that. I couldn't talk you off of that. I believe he's played in both games this season versus the Celtics. Let's see if I quickly can look it up here.
Pretty sure it's been good against them too.
Yeah. So yeah, the first game, 41 minutes, 21 points, 6 rebounds, 10 assists. And then the second matchup last Wednesday, 34 minutes. He had 27 points in that game, 9 rebounds, and 14 assists. So
he's averaging 24, 12, and 7.5. So
yeah,
or 24, 7.5, and 12. So yeah, he's had some great games.
Yeah, 15.5 I see for his rebounds and assists here for tonight. So couldn't talk you off of that. All right, next game on the schedule will go with the Toronto Raptors. They are in Miami to take on the Heat. Heat are laying 10 points in this game with a total of 224.5. Injury report for the Toronto Raptors. Scotty Barnes will be missing several weeks with a right ankle sprain. Bruce Brown continues to be out, and Emmanuel Quickley is out as well. For the Miami Heat, Jimmy Butler is probable. And that is the only significant injury in news in there. So Miami Heat, a very healthy squad coming into this game. This is also a matchup of the third time this season between these two squads. Miami, I believe, has won.
They're 1-1.
1-1. Both games did fly over the total. 121-111 in a Heat victory. And then they play the following game in Toronto, where Toronto got the victory in that game, 119-116. But back at it here in Miami, Scott, laying 10 points is the number for the Heat. What are your thoughts?
So I know historically speaking, Terrell and I have blindly faded the Heat laying points at home. Having said that, Toronto without Scotty Barnes might be a bottom 5 team in the entire league.
Yeah.
Like, this team is brutal when Barnes doesn't play. They also still haven't gotten Quickly back. Barrett's going to take a bunch of shots. We'll see what happens. But the point is, the Heat really should dominate this game. With Butler playing, with Bam playing, with Hero playing, they're actually healthy for once. It's dangerous. I get not wanting to lay it with Miami, but I'll put it this way. I understand why the line is so big. Because Toronto without Barnes has been kind of a laughingstock this season, and they can't stop anybody. The Heat did win the first home game against Toronto pretty comfortably, I believe. Let me just see if that was correct. They won the first game by 10, so yeah, it sounds about right. The issue, though, is that in that first game, Barrett did have 25 on the road, but Barnes had a triple-double with 24 points. And the second game they ended up having against this team, Toronto won outright by 3. And in that game, to mention Barnes' numbers there, Barrett at 37, by the way. In that game.
Yeah.
But Barnes in that second game did have 23, 10, and 9. So Barnes almost had back-to-back triple-doubles against this team, and now he's not on the lineup. I got a lot of questions. I'll put it that way. I think Bam should have a big game. I think Butler should have a good game too. I think I'd rather go with the Heat team total over, to be honest, because they've been flying over against this team, and you could argue that Miami don't trust to actually cover this big of a number. I trust them to score in this game. I'll go Miami team total over. I think I probably would consider Miami minus 10 because I really don't want to back Toronto in the spot, but I'll go with the team total over instead.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I mean, you mentioned that you and Terrell have been talking about home favorites,
It's been good
or
for years.
yeah, and this season it's I think it's gonna probably go back to that same situation. They are 6-5 ATS this season as a home as at home this season, 7-4 straight up. Maybe your 1-10 bet is something to look at here. I don't know, unless they end up blowing out the Heat or
That's
the
my
Raptors.
concern.
That's a concern.
I feel like I'm getting a bit too cute with it. I'd rather just take Miami to score like 120 in this
Yeah,
game.
I couldn't talk you off of that. I like the over in this game here as well, 224.5. Gun to my head, I would lay it with the Heat here, but I agree with Scott. Full game over, and then also Heat team total over in this game. Any props you like?
Yeah, I don't mind Barrett over. The volume's going to be crazy for his points. I said
Yeah.
before he had 2 great games against Miami. Yes, Barnes had a bunch of assists on that, so Barnes will be not available for the actual playmaking. But the point is, I do think Barrett will be jacking up shots against this team. I don't mind Bam assists in this game or Bam RA. Bam had 20 rebounds last game against Toronto.
Yeah.
I think he could have a very solid game. I think he had a triple double actually in one of those 2 meetings. So I don't mind Bam to go for a potential double-double, maybe fringe triple-double. So I don't mind the RA for Bam in this game. I actually thought about Butler under on his
Okay.
RA. Thought it was a bit high at like 9.5. He ended up with, I believe, 8 or 9 in the 2 meetings this season. So he has gone under. But I do think that Butler, if they blow him out, he's going to be the first guy to sit. I think Bam's in a great spot to have a great game. The line's a bit high for Butler on his RA. I don't mind the under on him. But I think Bam should really have a great game.
I was looking at Jakob Hurtl's points in this game. The two matchups this season against the Heat, he's done very well.
Mhm.
He had, let's see here, 24 and 17. The number right now is sitting at 14 and a half. Another guy that can contribute with Scotty Barnes being out. He also had a double-double in both of those games earlier this season, 24 and 10 and 17 and 11. So if you want to take a look at that, I know some of the guys have been mentioning Oshai Abachi in this spot here with um, Barnes being out. Sorry.
Mm.
I think that's a good spot if you want to take a look at his threes. There was one game where I did back him there, and he ended up hitting, I think he got right over 1.5 at was that plus odds, I remember a while back, but I'll probably wait on that one before the when they get back home in Toronto to bet on that one. But here we are. All right. Last game of the night, or before we get there, Scott, let me tell everyone about our good old friends over at mybookie.ag. Mybookie.ag, if you believe it or not, has been running on SGPN for years. Check out their new and improved website. It's great on mobile, plus props for every game and a live dealer casino as well. They even have a new early cash out option that's available on mybookie.ag. So head over to mybookie.ag, promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit match up to $1,000. Plus, also throw in a $10 casino chip for you as well. That's mybookie.ag. Make sure you use that promo code SGPN. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. SGPN's pro partner Rhythm is the #1 AI powered back sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds and get predictions for betting on money lines, spreads, totals, and props. Build your own model, copy one of the top performing models from the leaderboard, or have Rhythm build a model for you. Now you can track props in the Rhythm app, NFL picks, NFL props, college football, college basketball. Rhythm, honestly, they have it all. And taking a look at the props here for tonight. Uh, in the game we're just about to talk about, they like Keon Ellis to go up and over his 7.5 points, assists, and rebounds. They're predicting that he has 9.9. In the game that we just talked about, the rhythm model likes Oshai Abachi to go up and over his points of 9.5. They're predicting he has close to 13 points in this game. So claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right, Scott, let's get over to the last game of the night here. We'll go over to the Sacramento Kings. They are visiting the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans are catching 7 points here at home with a total of 231.5. Looking at the injury report for this game, we'll start here with the Sacramento Kings. pretty healthy squad. Only person that is going to be out is going to be Trey Lyles. He's to continue to deal with that right calf strain. For the New Orleans Pelicans, the usual suspects are all out. Jose Alvarado, Jordan Hawkins, Zion Williamson. They also did get news that Brandon Ingram is going to be out indefinitely for this New Orleans Pelicans team. He is dealing with a left ankle sprain similar to Scotty Barnes. Sacramento laying 7 points here on the road here. Scott, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, it was definitely more appealing at 5.5 last night. I get the line move at the end of the day. They did get Herb Jones back, so they have another body to use, but they're missing so many guys, and the Kings have been playing good basketball lately, mostly offensively. Yes, they played against the Jazz and the Spurs. I believe Wemby did not play in that game. So, point is, they had a pretty, I'd say, favorable schedule to drop 140 points in back-to-back games. But still, the point is the offense has looked better, and I do think that the Kings can outscore this team pretty easily. DeJounte has been okay this season. Not great by any means. McCollum's been fine, but no Ingram's a big deal. I think it's a bad matchup for the Pelicans as well, because I don't know who's going to guard Sabonis. So I think Sabonis could have a triple-double maybe in this game. I think he's in line for a monster rebounding game in particular. But I'll go with the Kings. Yes, I understand it's a lot of points to be laying on the road. The Kings have played better, though. They're healthy. Herter's been great lately. He's been coming off the bench. He's made a bunch of threes. I think it's a good spot. The Pelicans, though, are really not a good team at all. We know this. And I don't see them being much of a threat offensively to keep pace with Sacramento in this game. Give me the Kings.
Yeah, it's a Kings
time for New Orleans.
Yeah, it really is. 4-8 straight up at home. They are 6-6 ATS, but they are giving up a lot of points at home. 7-4-1 towards the over in the Pelicans home games this season. And like you mentioned, it's just been a lack of bodies for this Pelicans team. For the Kings, as you mentioned, that they are starting to play a little bit better. They kind of were in that phase where they brought Malik Monk into the starting lineup, figuring out a rotation that at that point, bringing Kevin Huerter off of the bench. I think, like you mentioned, this is going to be a great spot here for Sabonis because they really don't have a big man that can guard him. They are also allowing the most rebounds to the center position are the New Orleans Pelicans. So I think that despite his history against the Pelicans of not rebounding well, I think is a good spot for him. It's around 12.5 with VIG on it, around -130.
To be fair, that's also not fair because Valanciunas existed.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a fair point. And we could get 13.5 at plus money for his rebounds here tonight. But yeah, I like the Kings side here. Kings team total over would be the look here for me as well. You have anything on the total and then props?
Once again, I think Kings team total over could be appealing, but I don't really have much else. I think that it's going to be a pretty solid offensive game for the Kings.
All right. Any player props you're looking at?
Yeah, if I was going to go for anybody in New Orleans, maybe I would consider DeJounte. His assists are intriguing. I believe he had a double-double last game. I think at the end of the day, though, Sabonis on the board should be pretty dominant. So I like Sabonis rebounds, you said before, at 13.5. Not sure if that's a ladder opportunity because starting at 13.5 is kind of crazy. But I think that he can definitely get to 18 in this game, potentially, maybe 20, if things go in his favor. I think he's in a good spot. Fox should play well. Don't mind Herter threes, though, off the bench. I've been critical of him. He's been great. I like Monk as well. Monk did burn me last game. Not his fault. He got benched in the fourth quarter because they were up by 40, so he didn't get the points. But he's been great since being in the starting lineup. I don't mind Monk in this game.
Yeah, her threes are at 1.5 in this game, and like we mentioned that they have changed the starting lineup with Malik Monk in the starting lineup now. But against the Spurs, Kevin Huerter 4 3-pointers made. Against the Jazz, he had 6 3-pointers made. Didn't get it done against the Memphis Grizzlies, but he also did have 3 against the Houston Rockets back on Monday, December the 3rd. So, yeah, we'll definitely I'll have to dig a little bit more into that, but I do like that as well. And then, like I mentioned, Sabonis rebounds here for me for sure in this game. Anything else for Kings Pelicans?
Not really. Pelicans aren't worth my time.
All right. So that is the third game of the night. Let's get to our lock and dog here for tonight. And then we'll put together our underdog fantasy entry here for tonight here. Scott, you want to lead us off?
Sure. So for my lock, I actually have to wonder what I want to go with because there was a decent amount on the card I actually liked for props. I thought about the Pistons to cover, but I think I'm going to stay away from that. I think I actually am going to trust my instincts here, and it's going to be something involving the Heat. But I think I'm actually going to go with Butler under on his RA. I think that line's a bit high at 9.5. It's actually plus money. It's at plus 104. I'll take that. He has gone under this number in 5 of his last 7. Against Toronto twice this season, he's at 8 on the dot. I think Bam's in on for a great game. If it turns into a blowout, then I think Butler's going to be the first guy to get benched. And I do think that 9.5 is too high for Butler in general. Might have a good scoring game, but with Hero, with Bam, who had a bunch of assists lately, there has been less opportunity for Butler to get many assists. And he's not really a big rebounder anyway.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm picking Bam to have a big game and Butler to not. So give me Butler on the under 9.5 RA at plus 104 as my lock. For my dog, I actually am going to go back to the last game we talked about. I'm going to go with an alt threes play on Kevin Huerter. I'm going to go with Kevin Huerter over 2.5 threes at plus 215. He's had at least 4 in back-to-back games, at least 3 in 3 of the last 4, and he's been very efficient recently. He also has been really thriving off the bench. Pelicans, though, are allowing a bunch of threes. I believe they're allowing the 5th most per game in the entire league. So I do think that Huerter, with this bench unit, has been able to, I'd say, have the green light of all green lights, and I think it's a good spot for him against a pretty bad three-point defense. Huerter's also had 2+ in 4 straight against the Pelicans, so he has been good in years past. Give me Huerter for 3+ threes at plus 215 on DraftKings as my dog.
All right. For my lock, I'm going to take the Pistons plus the points here. I think, again, too many points here for the Boston Celtics. We've talked about this team at volumes over the past several seasons. They get off to a great start in the first half, and they just let their opponents, get back into the game, whether it's in the third quarter or in that fourth quarter where they just haven't been able to really pull away or close out games at certain points. But the Pistons this season on the road, as a road underdog this season, 6-3-1 ATS. As an away team, just overall, they've been very good as well. 8-5, 8-5-1 ATS in those spots. So I think they can keep this game competitive. I think they can keep it close here. We'll expect to see the front court depth of this Pistons team possibly try to create second chance opportunities by getting offensive rebounds and such. But I think this is a game there where they can keep it close. So I'll take the plus 12.5 here for the Detroit Pistons. For my dog, I think it might either be RJ Barrett 30+ points tonight at plus 220, or it's a bonus 15+ rebounds at plus 155. I'll put my faith here in RJ Barrett at plus 220. Obviously, without Scotty Barnes, we know the usage rate, the shot volume is definitely going to be there for a guy like RJ Barrett. I know the home and road splits are a night and day difference, where he's been a lot better in Toronto this season, but he did have a 37-point game. Yes, it was at home this season against the Miami Heat, but last 2 matchups in Miami for RJ Barrett, 35 points and 25 points. So again, without Scotty Barnes, I expect him to be the focal point of the offense. Shot volume should be through the roof. So I'll go with 30+ points here tonight for RJ Barrett. That's at plus 220 currently over on DraftKings. All right, Scott, let's put together our Underdog Fantasy entry here for tonight. That's going to be at underdogfantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code NBA SGPN. For first-time deposit and account users, I should say, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus of up to $1,000. And they also have all these fun discount tokens, profit boosts, and things like that. I know they had one on, what's today? Thursday. They had one on Tuesday, a profit boost of 50% for the NBA entries only. So they tried to really do their best to make it easy for us to win over on at underdogfantasy.com. So get over there, use that promo code NBA SGPN. All right, Scott, where do we want to start here for tonight?
Yeah, so I'm going to start off with the first game. Do you want to just go with back to Cade RA?
Cade RA, yeah. Couldn't talk you off of that. Let's go to Cade Cunningham.
Although Ball said, I'm pretty sure we like the over in every game tonight.
I think so.
Yeah.
Kings one, I think it probably just be Kings team to a lower. I'm not sure if the Pelicans.
That's kind of how I feel, but
Yeah.
he was wondering. I think we're on the over in basically every game.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. All right, so Cade RA, it's at 15.5. We'll go higher on that. What else you got?
I think I want Bam RA too.
Bam RA. All right.
20 rebounds against this team in the last meeting. It's kind of tough to go against.
Bam Adebayo. You said points and rebounds?
No, rebounds and assists.
Oh, rebounds and assists. That's at rebounds and assists 15.5.
Sure.
We'll go higher on that one. And then let's get something from the Pelicans game. You said Kevin Herter, right? Let me see if he's.
Should be a 1.5.
Yeah. Kevin Herter. Yeah, 1.5 is the number. Cool. All right, so we'll go with those three. All right, so we'll go Cade Cunningham higher, 15.5 rebounds and assists. Bam, rebounds and assists higher, 15.5. And then we'll go Kevin Herter higher, 1.5 3-pointers made. That'll get you to 5.02x on that entry. So every $10 that you do put in, you'll get a return of $50.20 if all three of those, in fact, do end up getting to the window for us here for Thursday night. Again, underdogfantasy.com. Make sure you guys use that promo code NBASGPN. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of the NBA Gambling Podcast. Scott, anything else you want to mention before we get out of here?
Yeah. Here's my Trae Young impression. There you go. That's all I got.
That was so disrespectful, but I honestly loved it.
I liked it.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I feel like if they did it in Ohio, it would have been a felony. But,
yeah.
I think it's allowed in New York. But, yeah, that was one takeaway that a lot of Knicks fans had. Oakley wouldn't have let that happen. Yeah, no. Oakley would have killed people. Like, it's fine. Plus, Oakley, I think, still banned from the arena, so he can't actually get into the Garden.
Yeah.
Shout out to, the ownership there over with the Knicks. But, yeah, I thought it was a great celebration. I get it. They're going to Vegas. I thought it was pretty fun. But Trae loves to be the villain, and he's had a lot of big moments against the Knicks. I'm a fan of the celebration. Maybe it's because I also don't root for the Knicks. So I enjoyed it twice as much, I guess.
There you go. Make sure you guys follow Scott over on Twitter. That's at Reichel Radio. You can follow me there as well at SportsNerd824. More importantly, if you haven't already subscribed to the NBA Gambling Podcast YouTube channel, please do us a favor, smash that subscribe button and hit the like button on the stream on your way out. If you could do us a solid there, we'd greatly appreciate it. All right, we'll be back tomorrow for the Friday games, and then we'll put together some type of schedule for the NBA Cup semifinal games, whether it's on Friday night or maybe early Saturday. We'll figure it out. But again, a reminder to be subscribed here so you get that notification when we do go live. All right, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off, and always remember to let it ride.
Basketball, gimme the ball because I'm gonna dunk it.